But as I said before, the whole purpose for this trip was to come talk with you.
Right, right.
That's why I came.
I think it's wonderful. I think it's, and you're getting to see what the other part of the country looks like, and it does something for you.
Are there any special memories that you remember about the Cape meeting?
That was in Michigan. That
1970.
was in, that's where John Hare was at the time. And I remember seeing him there, but he was a lot younger.
Was that,
I mean, he was a lot younger.
was that the first time you met John?
That's the first time I ever met John. And that's the first time I met Von Dale. And I can remember that during that Cape conference, Jack Horkheimer came up to me and said and wanted to know if SEPA had anybody to do their magazine or their newsletter.
Right.
I said no, but I tell you what, if you're asking for it, you can certainly have it.
And did he then?
And he did it.
Oh, wonderful.
And he had a wonderful one for about a year. And then I can't remember, I think it was in '74 that he had us down there. In Miami.
Okay, some of the other things we also talked about at lunch regarding the Constitution Committee. I was somewhat confused by that meeting in San Francisco.
Oh, yeah.
But as you clarified, that took place before Cape.
That was before Cape.
And that's where people talked about we need to have a national or
international.
And that's
when we went from I can't remember.
The place where Tom Gates was.
Right.
Which is where Carl is now.
Right, okay, that's where we were, that's where we met. And I remember giving a talk there, and it was education in the planetarium. And I was telling how I did it for teachers in North Carolina. And I had somebody to ask me, said, what do you think about your voice, you being a Southerner and everybody listening to you as a Southerner? I said, well, did you understand everything I said? He said, yeah. I said, well, there's no problem with it. Because that as long as you can understand me, that's all that counts. It doesn't matter.
So I understand that meeting in San Francisco was referred to like Neo Cape.
Right. Well, it was and Kaufman.
Right.
Is the one that came up with the idea of we needed this thing.
An organization.
We should have it for $75 a member, and that's when that got hold of me.
Yeah.
I mean, that really got hold of me, because that was talking like the elite group that was already. I think there were about 10 or 15 of them.
Right.
There were Chapel Hill,
right.
Adler in Chicago, and one in New York.
The IPCD, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
And so then, let's see, that covers. So, and again, as we talked about at lunch, ISPE was not officially formed until the Constitution, the bylaws were written and ratified
that
in 1972.
Was in 72.
Right.
And it was that summer when SEPA met. And I think it was, I think most of the other meetings, I think GLIPA and MAPS probably met sometime in the summertime,
Right.
the first of the summer. And the reason for it was because that's when the schools were out,
Right.
and they didn't have schools coming in. And so that's the reason I set mine up for June anyway, because the schools were not operating full blast.
So the organization really got its beginning in the mid 1972.
Right, in the summer of '72, when most of the, I'd say just about every one of them, by August, it was pretty well ratified, and they accepted it. Just about, and so that's when it was formed. And I think in '74 we had a meeting.
Right.
And
I mean, the first conference was in San Francisco.
right,
The first biennial conference of
Right.
ISPE
right,
was in San
That
Francisco.
was in San Francisco.
This is Dale's first president's message, 14 pages.
Oh gosh,
And at the end he says, I know that this is a little bit long,
right,
but so I'll delay other news that it could have included.
right,
But anyway, here's what he wrote about you. It says, Jim's messages emphasize the diversity of knowledge among planetarians, the mutual support and friendships we share with each other, and the inspiring nature of our field. And I was especially struck by friendships, the friendships that we share with our colleagues
right,
in not just the United States, but around the world.
around
So
the
I
world.
wonder if you could comment on that a little bit. You know,
I've never been I've gone to Stockholm, I've been to Hamburg, I've been to Portugal.
so did you feel welcome when you
Oh,
visited
yes,
these
yes.
facilities?
Oh yes.
Because
very
you
much
were
so.
a fellow colleague.
But now at Dennis's place, we had 16 of our people. That we had 30. I think we had 28. We had 28 or 30 people on a Grecian tour
Oh, to Athens, Greece.
to Athens, and we went to Macedonia. We went to Crete. We went to Patmos. We went to a lot of places.
So you were able to visit
And
the planetarium in
right,
Athens.
and Dennis, I told him when we would be back in Athens, and I had to get in fact he got 5 taxis or 6 taxis in a row because I had to tell him how many were coming, and I had to find out how many were coming. There were 16 of us, and so it was about 4 taxis that he had parked out in the front.
Yes.
We all got in, and they took us right straight to the planetarium.
Yeah.
And
You felt honored. I've had this discussion with some people, you know, when they're showing you all this respect and honor,
right,
in my opinion, they're not really showing it to me. They're showing it to the office of the president of the
that's exactly right.
IPS
That's exactly right.
for the respect.
Because you've been in that situation.
I have. When I was in,
And you feel like I don't deserve this,
Yeah.
but
I was at, I forget which conference, and some of the people from India came, and I visited their planetariums in India before becoming IPS
Right.
president. And they came, and they had this garland of flowers,
oh yeah,
and they draped it over me. And I think they even had a cloth they put over me.
Oh, yeah.
And they gave me these gifts, and you know, American presumption would be, oh no, don't make a big fuss.
Right.
But they were
Right.
honoring the office. They
Right.
weren't making a big fuss over me.
Right.
They were honoring the
But
office
you know, it's
of
kind
the
of
president.
hard to separate yourself
Oh,
from
it is. It is.
And it was in Monterey that I took that sometime before I had taken my superintendent, and what he did, he saw we had a. Let me go back. There was they had some kind of festival going
In Monterey.
in Monterey. And I mean, there was 10,000 people. I mean, we were just so close together. It was unbelievable. And they took us out there, and we were just. I mean, we were just tightened up, and we saw something go up just spinning. It was some kind of festival.
Oh, wow.
It was just spinning with all kind of rockets around it, and it was just, I mean, it went up probably 200 or 300 feet high. And that thing started coming down, and I said, Lord have mercy. And it came down. I mean, I tell you, I just moved away, and it hit right there. I mean, it just like that. I don't know where everybody went to, because there was no place to go. But it just opened up like that, and it hit right in the middle.
So this was by design? Part of the festival?
Well, it was part of the festival.
Or was it an accident that it landed near you?
But, well, it was going to land somewhere.
Yeah.
It just happened to land near me and my superintendent. But we really enjoyed that, and they came in, and we had about 11-course meal.
Wow.
I mean, to tell you, that was the first time I went to Mexico.
Yeah, wonderful.
And then later that year, I went down to Mexico City, and that's when we had the dinner, and
Right.
we had talked about forming the Mexican group.
In Dale's president's message, he had each of the past presidents write something in 2000,
Right.
concurrently with when he was writing his president's message. And in there, you mentioned one of the things you had done was you had contacted many individuals about the word planetarian.
Right.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
And I went to I had found out that the word planetarian had to be published in the New York Times or in or mentioned on television or it had to come in some big way, be used 3 or 4 different times for the Webster's to use it as a word, to designate it as a word. And so in 1988, I was in England, and when IPS met in England, and I made a talk on the planetarium, how we had to use it more often to be able to make it where Webster's would use it as a word. And I don't think it's a word yet, is it?
Haven't seen it.
No. You'd have to look it up. I'll remember to look it up and see.
Right, because I've looked in the books a lot of times to try to find it, and I can't find it. But planetarian was a person that was an individual who was operator of the
Right.
planetarium, and I can't remember who first used it.
Norm Spieling, I believe.
Norm Swirling? Yeah.
Norm Sperling.
Yeah, was the person that coined that term, if I remember correctly.
Right.
I read it when I was reading some past
Right.
issues of the Planetarium.
Right.
So now during your presidency, several times you use the word philosophy or your philosophy. Was there a personal philosophy that guided your presidency of the IPS?
Well, I remember what I wanted to do was I wanted it to be a net of people. I didn't care where they were, who they were, or how big they were, how small they were, what color they were, or what religion they had. Because then,
So any other thoughts about your philosophy?
no.
Okay, I'll come back to that in a little bit.
The only thing that I can see where we need to get involved more, or how the planetariums should get, all planetariums should get involved more, is in the arts. You know, in the
Right.
musical world and the ballet, and that's an art. In dance is an art. In music is an art. Everybody uses music,
Right.
and we use all kinds of music, and we even have people developing in their own music. And so I think we should be included into the arts. Because every city has an art guild. And so the planetarium ought to be involved into every city in the planetarium arts, or the arts of the
Right.
city. That should be part of it.
Very good point.
And I guess that's the only way I know how to put it.
And then you made, of course, reference during your president's messages to the team of individuals you were working with. People like Dave Rogers, president-elect, Don Hall, past president,
Right.
Dave Batch, executive secretary, Walt
Tencher.
Tencher, treasurer, and then you had people, John Collins, chair of publications, Ron Hartman, director of publications,
yeah.
and Dave Hoffman, IPS executive editor. So I was wondering, do you have any memories or lessons you learned working with the team, or any good stories about working with that
team? I think Ron Hartman was probably...
Didn't he really get the planetarium going?
Yeah, he got the planetarium actually on its foot.
I mean, the magazine.
Yeah. And Walt Tencher, and they were just wonderful individuals, just
Right.
wonderful people.
And they were
The
were
first
talking-
chapter in this, you can find some information in it about Jack and Dennis giving me that thing, and that was 36 years after it.
we were talking about your team,
Right.
and one thing I noticed was that you had John Cotton as the chair of publications, and then you had Ron Hartman was director of publications production. What did that mean? He was like the editor of,
He was the editor. Ron Hartman was the
of
editor.
the Planetarium.
Right.
And then there was Dave Hoffman, IPS executive editor. What did he do?
Now, he's the one that got all the information together for the IPS group. He's the one that got all the information from the other
So
planetarium.
he edited like the directory.
Right, from the other. In fact, that's when we started the directory, I believe.
Right.
Or tried to.
Okay, then there was this was in one of your president's messages. No, wait a minute. That's
Let
not
me
the
tell
right-
you what happened. The reason I don't have all this. I had a little building out here in the back about 15 years ago. No, it's been longer than that. Yeah, we've been here 32 years. It's been 18 years ago. And I was at an IPS conference or somewhere, I was not home anyway.
Right.
And so we had talked about getting rid of the house. And because it was over there in the corner, and it was used for the building of this house. Because
Right.
it had a table saw in it and some saws and some nails and all that. But I also had all my IPS boxes, everything I had, the president's letter, everything else, everything I had. Even I had some of my planetarium programs that I sent everywhere. I had a copy of that in there. Well, when I was gone, she told them to move it. They took the whole building and everything and just took it to landfill.
Oh, no.
And that was all of my IPS stuff, everything that I had was gone.
It's a good thing you're a forgiving person.
Well, I mean, you know,
What can you do?
What can you do? You can't bring it back.
No. So here's in the summer of '78, you wrote, this is before you'd been president-elect. You weren't
Right.
president yet. And you said, the planetarium field is beginning to have influence on society. We must attempt to achieve respectable international recognition, initiate an effort in achieving greater acceptance by those in positions of administrative power,
Right. That,
So that was-
includes the mayors and the
even up to the Congress,
right,
the president,
right.
and then you wrote about, you even testified before the Senate
The Senate,
subcommittee
yeah,
on
I
appropriations. And what was the result of that testimony?
Some senator wrote it down, and I don't know what they ever did, but several years later, this is interesting. I wrote an article. I wrote one of the senators, an article about something, and they wanted me to. They wanted my permission to use 2 sentences out of it.
Do you remember
So-
what those sentences were?
Yeah,
approximately.
the sentences were something like, we need to look to the future. We need the initiative to look to the future and have the worthwhile to do it correctly, or something like that.
Yeah. I could see why they would want to use that.
And so I sent it there, and they published it in the Senate Journal in Congress. And but when I was there, and I never forgot this, I had a pretty long sheet to talk to them,
Right.
and I was talking to something that had a microphone. I guess I could probably write them and probably get a copy of it.
Probably. They probably recorded it, and
I'm sure they recorded it. And what I saw was all the 12 constellations were in the corridor, up in the
Senate chamber.
in the Senate chamber, all the way around.
Neat.
All 12 of them.
Wow.
And I saw that, and I told him, I said, this is part of it. And just look around there.
Yeah,
There
isn't
it
that
is. The
amazing?
ecliptic is
Yeah.
there, and that's it.
And then well, this would have been one of your last, I think it was your last president's message. You wrote that you were disillusioned, plunged to the depths by unkept words and lack of action. Yet my underlying philosophy was not shaken. So, what was the underlying philosophy you're referring to there? You're saying my underlying, even though you were disappointed.
we never obtained the good recognition I thought that the
Okay.
planetariums should have,
And we haven't to this day,
and we still haven't. And that's the reason I want to get into the arts.
right? That might help.
That might, after 50 some years,
Right.
we might be able to do it.
So your underlying philosophy was that planetarium should have recognition of what they do in society, and that by that recognition, the resources might be made available so planetariums could serve
Now let me tell
society.
you what I'm gonna tell you what I want to do.
Okay, tell me, please.
When I'm 84 years old, if I get to be 84, I want to go to the IPS conference, and I want a 15-minute speech. And in it, I want to tell them what the planetarium world is and what I want it to be.
You would be 84 in what year?
Let's see, that's 4 or 6 years from now.
Okay. So we do not know yet where the conference will be,
Right.
but I will tell other people. So I think you need more than 15 minutes.
Well,
You could
I taught about 20 minutes in England
Right.
at IPS conference, and I tried, and I wanted to do it before the whole group,
Yeah.
but they stuck me in a room, and
Right.
I had maybe 15 people in there.
See, that's why I think that you should be, you've been involved in the planning of conferences, so have I.
Right.
And you should be one of the invited speakers. So then you would speak to the whole group
Right.
rather than just have a single paper
Right.
that only a few people might attend. So that's a very good idea.
Dave, I tell you what, one of the most outstanding events that I can remember is when I was in January. This was in the fall. We met in Vondale was at the Smithsonian,
Okay.
and we had some kind of get together.
Like a officers,
It was something.
Meeting.
It was something in Washington D.C.
right?
And
Or was
I
it the
guess
whole society?
yeah, there were about 500 people
Oh,
there.
so it was a conference.
It
There
was
was
a conference of
there was
some
an IPS conference at the Smithsonian at the planetarium there.
All right, but I was coming up as the president,
Right.
and I was the last speaker, and everybody else had come down from the thing. And I don't remember what I said, but I remember one thing I did say. And it was because I had, about 2 or 3 days before, I had been coming down 95, and I saw one of the biggest meteors
Uh-huh.
come straight down, slow.
Right.
I mean, fairly fast, but slow. Slow in compared to,
Right.
and it exploded right, I mean, right there. And I
Amazing.
just couldn't get over it. And so when I went up, I said, I got something to tell everybody. I said, I don't know what it is. I said, but it's an explanation mark for what I'm going to do. Or what I might do. I don't know what.
Yeah.
And I told them that story.
Oh, wonderful.
And I still remember it just like if it was
Yeah.
yesterday, you know. And when I left, I said, that's maybe the beginning of my planetarium presidency.
Oh, wonderful.
And so when I turned around, everybody stood up and gave me a standing applause.
I think you made reference to that in your first president's message.
I
know.
tell you what, I couldn't get over
Let
it.
me tell you a quick story. I think a lot of times we're inspired, especially as a officer,
Right.
to speak. In China, at our IPS meeting, we were having passing out awards, so I got Past President's Award.
Oh, yeah.
And I was struck by one of the speakers that talked about Neil Armstrong.
Right.
And a year or two before he passed away, he said something to the effect that as the 20th century was a century of technology, is my hope the 21st century will be the development of the human character.
Oh, yeah.
And then we also had these children that danced for us at the beginning of our IPS conference. So I said, here's what Neil Armstrong said, and these are the children that are going to help accomplish that. And it just came to me,
Right.
and they said, the people that were listening, some people said, it's like God inspired me to say that.
Well, it might.
Yeah.
You don't know.
Yeah.
Like, for example, that was not even in my
No.
speech.
Mm-hmm.
And why did I even mention all that?
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. I just think the good Lord up there knows
Yeah.
what's going to happen to us anyway.
So are there any other particular highlights of your presidency you would like to speak about? I mean, you've spoken quite a bit, but is there anything else you can think of about your
Oh
presidency?
gosh,
I mean, it's so,
I don't know. There's so many things.
Yeah.
I do remember that when we were meeting in Cocoa Beach,
mm-hmm,
and I was the president of that, and the newspaper came and I had and I made some statements that when I got home and looked at them, I don't even know where they came from.
yeah,
I mean, they were just. It was not even me.
right.
I mean, it was
know
just too. It was too.
I know exactly what you mean.
It was too. It was too something.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was, but it was. I don't know how to explain it, but
I can understand. I mean, I've experienced the same thing.
so you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I've always, that was one thing that always struck me. That, and some of the same things has happened when I'm teaching that. Not every time,
Right.
but sometimes things happen, and I don't know where they come from.
Now that I just thought another question regarding your presidency. Let's say, how would I put the words? You were nominated to run for president-elect. What made you accept the nomination? What was your motivation, or?
I wanted to. I don't know. I was young. I was only about 34 years old.
Mhm.
I mean, I was just a young one. And I just when they asked me about it, I told them that I would love to,
Mm-hmm.
because I think I can accomplish something.
And I think I read in one of your messages that you could give something back to
Right.
the society.
You want to
Right.
anyway. You know, it's just like when you pay for somebody's meal.
Mm-hmm.
It's just something you just want to do.
Mm-hmm.
You can't explain it, but but you know, and I had a school psychologist to come over in the planetarium, and his office was across the street, and he'd come over every morning drinking coffee with
Oh.
me. And he and I talked for, I guess, probably for 2 years, every morning, about, over a cup of coffee.
Wonderful.
And out of all those times, the one thing that came out of it was that you've got to have the initiative. You can't beg it, borrow it, or steal it. You've got to have it from somewhere. The initiative to accomplish something.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be born in you somewhere, somehow. And that's what we finally came up with.
And how can we encourage new planetarians, people who are coming into the field, to get involved and eventually perhaps assume
Right.
a leadership role? Do you have any
Right.
ideas about that?
I think that has to do with the individual.
Mm-hmm.
I think first place, it takes a unique individual to become a planetarium person. I
Right.
think,
Mm-hmm. It does.
and to stay in it. I mean, some people come and they don't get out. They get out of it. But I think it's in you to start with, from somewhere. I don't know when it starts. I don't know, but I think that,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know. I just I get teary eyed when I think about all that.
Yeah. I mean, I've, not only think about what motivated me to accept the nomination. It was similar to what
Right.
you said, to give something back.
Right.
And it was an opportunity. I mean, someone has to do it.
Right. Right.
And if no one wants to hold an office, the society would just.
Right.
And I
That's
believe-
exactly
I
right.
believe that IPS is very important,
Right.
and so that's what. And I've talked to many people that they said it was in their heart. They
Right.
wanted to serve.
Well,
And-
see, that's what I'm saying. It's the initiative to do something. You have to have it.
Yes.
I know of at least 2 people that got into the planetarium field and then got out of it.
And Jack and I were talking on the way down about how Jack Horkheimer talked about imagination
Right.
and had
Yeah.
a number of programs about, that involved imagination.
Oh,
And we
yeah.
were talking about how everything originates first in our minds.
Right.
If you were going to build invent an airplane, build an airplane, make a chair, it first has to be an idea in someone's
Right.
mind or a group of
Right.
individuals, and then you create it
Right.
from that image, from that imagination in your own mind.
Right.
And that we have that ability as human beings to create. We get an idea,
Right.
and in due time, it may not happen immediately.
Right.
You may know some of the things I've done, like in Ghana, the planetarium there.
Right.
And that project it took like really 5 years or more.
I think it's wonderful that you're thinking about
Yeah.
going back to Africa.
And I love it. I mean, but I know they first got the idea in 2006 when I was over there visiting, and then we talked to a lot of people, and Joanne Young even spent some money to bring people together,
Oh yeah,
and afterwards someone said, well, nothing was really accomplished there,
right,
but at the right time, it all came together,
right,
and the right people, it all came together, and the planetarium suddenly developed within like 3 or 4 months.
right. Well,
I
that's
mean-
what happened to the planetarium down at Sunset Beach.
Mhm.
This man he was a multi-billionaire, really. I mean, he was a wealthy man, but he was not going to put all of his money into it just for him.
Mhm.
He wanted other people to. He put most of the money in it, but that's the reason it's called the Ingram Planetarium.
Interesting.
But
Well, one of the things, yeah,
the Ingram Planetarium at Sunset Beach, it's a nice facility, very nice.
well, I mean, that's the way things like that develop, where we had Dave gave a talk about Ghana at was it a WAC?
There's
I
a
think.
whack in
A
Killeen,
whack.
in Killeen,
In
Texas.
Killeen, Texas. And Liz and I were sitting there, and we went and talked to somebody else because I was still GPPA president. So we talked to the WAC presidents. We had a little bit of money, and WAC donated the money to bring Jacob from Ghana to IPS
IPS.
in Baton Rouge. So that's how he made it there, so that people got
Right.
more exposed.
Yeah, I mean, I was the only one in IPS who had met Jacob,
Oh yeah,
and no one else had met him. But I was able to convey Jacob's inspiration, what he wanted to do to
right.
people, made them excited.
Oh
To
yeah.
Jack, to Joanne, and then they wanted to meet Jacob, and they were motivated to.
But see, that's what I told you about Jack.
That leads kind of into the question, the next question about internet and so forth. As IPS president, you mentioned the telephone kept minds in touch, and feelings could be felt, attitudes and experiences paved the road to folks. So one of your main ways of communicating was by telephone.
Right.
So if you were IPS president today,
It would be the internet.
it'd be the internet.
Right, because you could not only send your thoughts, you could send your pictures, you could even put down, I mean, your own picture.
Right.
You could be there.
And you could do Skype.
Right.
Have you done Skype?
Uh,
Kind of like a phone call.
right, it's about the same thing.
But
But yeah, that's the way I would put it.
so you have
Yeah,
lots of tools you could use.
Right. In fact, that's almost like
Telephone, television.
Yeah.
Right. From one place to another.
But yet, this is an issue that sometimes come up at council, where some people think, well, we don't need to meet in a physical location for council. It's wasting a lot of money for IPS to pay the airfares. Why don't we just do it all by Skype?
Right.
But I would suggest that there is
Yes.
a reason,
You can't do it by any other way except personal.
because you can't, I mean, if you know a person, if you've made some initial contact, you can do a certain amount of business by Skype.
You can't by Skype. You can't see body language.
That's what I was just going to say. Body language, which we're not even subconsciously we're interpreting it.
Right.
We don't even know we're doing it.
That's exactly right.
And especially when you're working with individuals from all over the world,
Right.
not just from the United States,
Right.
but people from Australia, Sweden,
Right.
India, and trying to communicate just by Skype,
Right.
in my opinion, would be a nightmare.
Right. I think so too. I think so too.
But there's still some people that want to, well, I won't come to
Well-
the meeting, I want to Skype in.
Well, they don't have their,
Okay, I want to say something else.
oh gosh. I could talk all day long.
This is the second to last question. You also wrote in that article, Past, Present, Future, the idea of all the planetariums in the United States working together in an association that represents all, and to show that national support for planetariums is in the national interest.
Well, that's what I really thought of at the time. And Paul Campbell said that I don't think you ought to try to do that.
Should leave the affiliates, the 7 affiliates.
Just leave, he said, why don't you just leave it like it is?
But how much influence does each individual affiliate have, say, on
Right.
Congress or
Right.
president
Well,
or
they don't have very much.
a national
Right.
group could have more.
Yeah, a national group have more, but
I think the alternative was, though, that the regions like to keep their own independence and their own.
My final question,
okay, that's good.
and do you have any final comments as we
No,
as we end this?
I just
as
think
we
it's
end this interview?
wonderful. I think it is wonderful that you're doing what you're doing, and it takes an individual like you to do it.
Coming to interview, you mean?
Yeah, to do what you're doing, and do a fantastic job of it.
Oh, thank you.
And to sit down and read it, well, we've talked about other things other than planetarium today, which even makes it that much
Yeah.
better,
And
And
yeah, I feel this. I mean, I realize I was talking with Joanne Young, but I was mentioning to Joanne, we need to look at ourselves, as I think we were speaking briefly at lunch about, and recognize our strengths.
right,
And so Joanne and I were talking, and I came to realize gradually over the years that, like for example, when I did the Ghana project, I can go and meet someone and
right,
capture their excitement and bring it back and inspire other people. I guess I'd say talent for inspiring people to pursue something.
right.
And that's what I feel that, like for example, that project I was telling you about in
Right.
Africa, that it's on my heart.
I think
want
you
to
should
do
do
something.
that. I
And,
think you should do that.
I don't know exactly where it's going to go, but
Right.
I read it inspiring. Let's see who wrote it. It might have been Wayne Dyer. You ever read any Wayne Dyer?
I don't recall the name.
He basically said, don't, you're inspired, don't ask how it's going to be done,
Right.
but just embrace life. And people will come like they did when I started working, trying to do the Ghana project. People just, I went to a conference in Sri Lanka, met
Right.
Joanne Young,
Oh gosh, that's
and April
wonderful.
Witt, and George and Jane Hastings.
Oh yeah.
And these were people who were important in doing the project in Ghana. So we don't need to ask how, we just need to embrace life, to see what comes and embrace it and follow.
Right. And you've got two of the best. Let me tell you a little story.
Okay, I appreciate it.
I went to. It's about George and Jane Hastings.
Oh yeah.
I went to. I called a guy up in Virginia at the space place in, I think it was in
Richmond?
Portsmouth, Virginia.
Oh, okay.
It was in Portsmouth or Newport News. No.
Yeah, there is a NASA facility at
Well,
Newport
anyway,
News.
I had a new museum, so I wanted something to go in the museum to start with on a long-term basis. So I called him, and so I went up there. I drove a truck up there and stayed in a hotel right close by, and I took a young high school boy that had never been out of Robinson County with me. And it was George Hastings.
Oh, wow.
And George Hastings, we got to talking and carrying on, and he said he had to leave. I said, what you got to leave for? He said, well, I got a date. I said, well, I said, who is she? Tell me who she is. Well, you don't know who she is. She said that. He said, well, it's Jane Hastings. I said, let me tell you one thing. If you've got a chance, you better marry her. I said, because I don't only know her, I know her well. Because she was the planetarium girl in Richmond, Virginia. He said, how do you...
And she wrote the columns in the
right.
Oh, yeah.
Planetarium.
And they got married. And when he bought a 32-foot sailboat down in Charleston, and he asked me to go down there with him to get it. And so I went down there with him, and we got in the sailboat. And between he and I, we brought it all the way back up, because I'd been along there several times, you know, throughout.
People make a difference. And
Right.
Yeah.
to me, it's people first.
Yeah.
Right.
And some of these ideas,
Right.
philosophies.
Well, I
comes
tell you
later.
what. What do you? How do you think the conversations have gone today?
Oh, they've been fantastic. I mean, I feel really invigorated, and I hope that I might be able to sometime send you an email if I have some other questions that
Oh,
you
yeah.
could take your time to. But I want to personally thank you for the wonderful talk we've been able to have today.
Oh, yeah.
As I said before, it's been a dream of mine to do it for several years, and it also motivates me to be sure to interview some of the other
Oh gosh,
past
yeah.
presidents. I want to go out to see Vondel
Von Dale is a
yeah.
wonderful guy.
and other presidents also I would like
Right.
to interview, because this history is important to preserve.
Right.
I would like to, you've seen the book probably by Jordan Marche II on planetarium. This book right here,
Oh yeah.
Theaters of Time and Space.
Oh yeah. I've
And,
seen that one.
But that basically concludes just as IPS was starting. And there's really been no history. I mean, a lot of it's sitting in archive files
Yeah.
down in Florida. No one's written down the history of our society
Right.
and the lessons that we can learn, that we have learned as the years that went by.
Well, you know what? You could make a book out of it.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, he's talking about a book.
And you put the philosophies in there, and they're all different,
Right.
and some of them might be the same.
Mm-hmm.
And people would enjoy reading that, because my book is a you can read one chapter and set it down.
Right.
You can read another chapter and set it down, because there's 22 stories in it.
Right. So how do you think the interviews went today? The talk?
Oh, I think it's been wonderful, and in more ways than just one. And I remember seeing you in Baton Rouge, And I understood completely why you didn't have time. Because
you've been
you,
there.
that didn't bother me not one bit in the world. And I just think I think you've got some great ideas, and if you can put this book together, or whatever you do with it,
Yeah.
I think it
I'd start probably with writing some articles for the planetarium.
right, and then just incorporate them into a book.
Yeah.
I just think it, and I've just got another friend. Is what it is.
Wonderful.
A friend for life.
Thank you.
And I mean that for sure. I mean that
I know you do.
from the bottom of my heart. Dave, you don't meet many people like that.
That is true. People that you feel a kinship with,
Right.
what do you say, soulmate almost,
Right.
that has the same perspective on the planetarium, and not just the planetarium, but life.
Right. Life
You
in
and I
general.
share.
And where you've done leadership.
Yeah.
Right.
And
As
both of us
president.
have been presidents.
Right.
That's some of it. But I know in other ways too, we connect, the
Right.
two of us.
And I think we've got a lot to